Good morning, and here I am hovering over downtown San Diego, 92101. This is a view from a helicopter, and of course, it's a photo. I did not take the photo. Um, so it shows the downtown, and it shows the harbor across from the convention center, including the wonderful development out into the San Diego Bay. Now we're here to welcome Ron Cooper, and I think Dr. Ken Lloyd will join us also in a little bit. So we're live, and here we go. Ron Cooper will be joining us now, hopefully. I pushed the right button. And hello, Ron.
There we go.
All
Good
right.
morning. Hey, Tom.
Good morning.
Hey, it's all good here. How about there?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay, here comes Ken. We are live, and we're in the global meeting room. This is Ron Cooper in Washington, D.C. metro region, and the cooperculture.com. You got to go check that out right away. Well, after the show, but you'll do a deep dive into this guy and his energy and the culture that he and his wife of many years, Marty, uh, have built and developed. And I'm going to let Ken Lloyd come into the room here. Here we go. And we have some note takers as well. The gang's all here. Okay. As I said, we're live in San Diego. I got to get all my note takers lined up here. I'm sorry for the delay. Hello, Ken Lloyd. You're on mute.
Good morning, Ken.
Okay, the pleasures and wonderfulness of live TV. Hi, Ken.
Yeah, hey, gents. Good morning.
Hey,
Good morning.
welcome. Welcome indeed. So we are live, and I was just introducing Ron Cooper and the background here. I did not take this picture. This is from the San Diego Economic Development Corp. And that's how beautiful it is. They do a good job. It's taken from a helicopter. That's downtown San Diego, across from the convention center. I'll get out of the way here. And it's just a beautiful image. That's the downtown, 92101. The convention center is sort of in the middle of that picture, and then the islands out into the harbor are recreational oriented parks, restaurants. The music outdoor symphonic shell is right there in the front on the water. You can't see it too well from this distance, but it's a beautiful walk around area, publicly available. It was very well funded by some really wealthy business people who live in the region here. Zero taxpayer to do all that. The Jacobs family founded Qualcomm, which is huge in semiconductors, of course. And the other family is called Rady, R-A-D-Y, real estate family for generations. And they funded this whole thing and still fund the San Diego Symphony, of which Joanne and I are a member of that. Not that we're symphonic crazed people, but it's a nice place to go. Ron Cooper, today's show, I thought we should talk about something that well, we can always talk about government and geopolitics and all this really interesting stuff that's happening right now. And some of it's pretty scary for a lot of people. But I thought we should be talking about how to make a safe place, psychologically safe place in the workplaces, but now in the streets as well. What do you think, Ron?
I think it's a great topic, Ed. We have discussed this in part before, and most recently in the United States, in Minneapolis, just yesterday, as we record this, ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, was involved in a shooting of a 37-year-old female The details are sketchy at this point as the incident is being investigated. Many accusations are being tossed about. And who's to blame? Was it self-defense? Was there anything illegal, and so forth? I want to tell you at the outset, Ed and Ken, it's not my position to try to determine in the court of public opinion anything right or wrong, but I do think a lot of these topics, and immigration is one of many topics, and we said we're not here to discuss politics per se, but yet a lot of this is intertwined, necessarily integrally related. It works its way into the family and will logically work its way into the workplace. And what I'm building up to is, as a leader in the workplace, as a leader in your family, do you encourage discussing controversial topics, or do you say something to the almost worn out expression, we do not and never will discuss religion and politics? And I will tell you, Ed and Ken, I'm a believer that if we do not discuss controversial topics, we may not know how to discuss them civilly and with meaningful dialogue. I do think we need to discuss controversial topics. I do think it's up to us as leaders to set, I'll use the term ground rules. You may want to use a different term when you're talking with your people, but I do think it is necessary to establish the boundaries that, and one of those boundaries being in discussing controversial topics. I've mentioned it numerous times and I'll mention it over and over again. One of those ground rules is we will never consciously denigrate other people. We may vehemently disagree, but we're going to do so in a civil manner. We'll discuss the facts, the factors. I'm a cause and effect kind of person. I would like to discuss these kind of topics from an intellectual viewpoint, meaning why is it you believe what you do? What are the facts behind it? And I want to discuss that civilly, but I want to stay away from yelling, shouting, emotional reactions, denigrating each other because we may disagree. But Ed and Ken, I'm a believer that if we do not encourage discussing controversial topics, it is very possible. I won't say likely, but it's very possible, I do believe, when we do get roped into, or let's say lured into a controversial topic, we may not be prepared to know how to discuss a topic civilly. And if it does start to go south, so to speak, into an emotional shouting contest, how can we be an effective catalyst to help keep this conversation, again, I'll use the term above ground, and keep it in a very civil way in which, even if I strongly disagree with you, I still want to learn what your perspective is and what your thoughts are. I'm not sure we can discuss this too much, but I think it's appropriate to periodically discuss topics like this, that how do we present, and as leaders, how can we, let's say, establish a culture where I do encourage open, controversial discussions on controversial topics, but keep it at the, let's say, informational level without shouting at each other. And I know there's some leaders who feel that I don't even know how to introduce this. I would like to achieve that. I just don't know how to discuss this without getting into an emotional, embroiling conversation, even discussing the boundaries of this kind of thing. But I think it's appropriate to discuss this. Ed and Ken, any thoughts you have?
Thank you for that introductory ground rule kind of thing. Very, very important. Ron, yeah, I really admire you. We've known each other now just about a year, and several conversations, some social, some light, and some heavy ones like this. And I learned from each one. And I'm grateful to have you involved here on this program for the benefit of our audience as well, Dr. Ken Lloyd, PhD in organizational development and things related. Ken, the floor is yours.
Well, as usual, Ron and the Cooper culture are spot on. Ron's comments were just extremely appropriate, intelligent, and very useful and productive for all of us in any environment, work environment or home. I think one key word that Ron used is a discussion. Let's have a discussion. That does not mean we're going to have an argument, a fight, a confrontation, yelling and screaming. That's not a discussion. The discussion is let's talk about it. And Ron also used the word let's learn. I want to learn about how you feel so I can understand. But it's fine. And I agree. If we stifle these kinds of discussions, they're ultimately going to blow up. People are going to hold it in, and at some point it's going to burst if the topic does come up. All of that pent up concern, anger, anxiety, frustration is going to come out. And it's fine for meetings and discussions to have ground rules. We have ground rules in all sorts of stuff. It's normal to have ground rules for business meetings. Basically, we're not going to be interrupting each other. We're not going to get into any nasty kinds of comments. We're not going to have the cell phones going during these meetings. That's fine, and that's accepted. And certainly treating our fellow employees, those in our lives, with respect and with trust, building around those two concepts, we can have a wonderful discussion and increase our understanding on a mutual basis. I'll get to better understand you and your thoughts. You'll get to understand me and mine. I'm not out there to change you. I'm not trying to say, oh, you're wrong, I'm right. I want to hear what you think, but that's not what it's about. Let's learn from each other and build from there. Perhaps there will be some changes based on the learning that we undergo as part of our discussion.
Yeah, I'm going to interject here just one moment. That I think you and I would probably agree 99.9% on many topics. When I use the term ground rules, I'm going to just interject my personality that some people may say, Ron Cooper, you sound like a dictator fascist, the way you talk. You ground rules. You either do as I tell you to do, or I'll kick you out of my room. Well, I do speak with a resolve, and I don't want you to have any doubt of whether I am doubting what I believe. Ken, yours and my personality is very different. I'll moderate myself when I talk to you. I know that just based on our difference in personalities, you could, I know you never would, declare me a fascist dictator, but if I don't moderate my voice in speaking with you and others of different personalities, I know it could come across that way. So I necessarily need to moderate myself. It just but moderating myself doesn't mean that I have lessened my resolve.
Well said. So my role here is to be a happy TV talk show host and to welcome diversity of opinion. Ken, when you worked in industry for 18 years at a senior position overseeing talent and things related, how did you handle town hall kind of situations?
Well, I think with the same overall premise of saying, look, well, we're going to have a discussion. Town halls are different in person versus virtual. You do them on Zoom. It's unfortunately more of a, if you will, a lecture, which I don't like. That's not how people learn. That's not how people grow. We learn by engaging with others. So if there is a so-called town hall kind of meeting, I like it to be an open forum. There'll be items we want to discuss, but if it's truly a town hall, it's not a lecture. It's a chance for people in the town to come in and express their thoughts, their views, their opinions. So I prefer the two-way and open communication. Again, with the same thought, there are no reprisals. There are no automatic insults of any kind, no derogatory comments, but let's use it as a building and developmental kind of discussion where we can all learn. So in the organization where I was working, and frankly, as a consultant as well, that's the kind of framework and context that I prefer if we're going to have those kinds of conversations, not a lecture. Even in the field of education, lectures have been found to be the least effective way for people to learn. It's just not a great modality. People aren't as engaged, and particularly these days, people are sitting in a lecture, they got a laptop on their lap or they got a cell phone. They're not going to take in much of it at all. So it's not a great way to have, if you will, a discussion or a town hall.
And Ken, I'm right there with you that the interactive, that's a very operative word. I want to engage in, I want to inspire an interactive conversation. Dependent on personalities. I know there are some personalities that, who knows, 2, 3, 4 people, man, this conversation can be going at 118 miles an hour, and the reserved people are not going to feel comfortable engaging in that. Oh, well, let me interrupt and so forth and so on. I, as an effective leader, to be interactive, I need to be very aware of everyone in the room. I need to be discerning of, not judgmentally, but discerning of those who might want to have a comment, but I'm not going to interrupt a 150-mile-an-hour conversation. That's just not my personality. But I would say, okay, just pick a name, Judy. I just kind of discern you may have a thought in this. Can you verbalize what you're thinking? And I don't want to embarrass you. She may not be thinking anything. I may have misdiscerned, but I don't want to make her feel uncomfortable. But yet, I want to offer her the opportunity to, I'm going to stop this 150-mile-an-hour conversation to give you an opportunity to interject. But I want you to know I value you and your thoughts. That's the way I try to encourage interaction.
That's absolutely right. And the person who's talking at 150 miles an hour is not going to stop. And frankly, if that person does stop, perhaps to take a breath, it's not to listen to others or see what they have to say. It's sitting there formulating, what am I going to say next? As soon as this person stops, whatever he or she is saying, I don't care. I'm just going to go right back on my track and continue. And that's not a discussion. It's not a conversation. That's a lecture. And it's just not how we advance any topics or any understanding at all.
And you're right on, Ken. Listen, another very, very operative word. For those who talk at 150 miles an hour and you stop talking, did you just stop talking, or are you using that as an excuse to say, well, because I stopped talking, I'm listening? No, the fact that you stopped talking doesn't mean you listened. That's so I want to discern from your conversation, your interaction. Are you discerning? Are you picking up on and integrating what other people, assimilating what other people are saying, or are you there primarily to dictate what your position is?
Absolutely right. That's the context. So, as leaders, if we want to create a psychologically safe work environment, we have to be ready to deal with that as well and make sure that other voices are heard. And I like what you're saying when you address someone. Yeah, I can tell you have something you want to say. What's on your mind? To make it nice, make it friendly, and at least to get some other thoughts and topics out on the table, particularly if there are others in the room who are trying to monopolize and dominate the entire discussion, which is not even a discussion. Discussion, by definition, should be two-way. If a person is just lecturing, that's not a discussion. That's called a lecture.
Yep, right on. And I would say that as a leader, I'm very interested in every thought, dissenting and otherwise. But another D word that I do not want to engage in is denigrating another person. I do want dissenting opinions, but let's do that in a very discussable, learning environment without denigrating the Ken and Eds of the world.
And that's creating psychological safety, where people feel I can say this, and people are certainly, Ed is truly interested in what I have to say. He might disagree. I might even be wrong, totally wrong, but I'm not going to get chastised, put down, insulted, degraded, or any of that kind of thing. We'll talk about it. And again, from the learning and development standpoint, that's how you do it. Instead of someone saying something and just hammering on top of them, or just continuing with your own thought as if they didn't say one thing.
And Ken and Ed, I'm not trying to dominate this, but your statement, Ken, may be totally wrong. Well, the way I would approach that, Ken, is that, well, Ken, my statement is based on whatever the source of my facts are. I consider them facts, and you may not, but it's not my uninformed opinion. But I have my perspective based on whatever my source is. You may tell me, well, that source is definitely wrong because of, or you may say, well, yeah, well, thank you for that. I didn't know that source existed. But at least I respect your input, and I'm not trying to in any way degrade you. That was Ken. Gosh, but how could you make such a silly comment because of? But no, I just want to tell you that my source is, and perhaps we can both learn through, and I hope we will learn through our dialogue.
Absolutely. How many people can go into a discussion and have in the back of their mind, I may be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I want to learn. I want to listen. And here's what I believe in this particular situation about what happened, regardless of the topic. But I could be wrong, as opposed to I'm right. I know I'm right, and that's it. I'm locked. I'm rigid, and I'm not going to change my views. That's how you end up with far more conflict and getting nowhere in terms of making progress in a conversation and developing a truly safe environment.
Yeah, you're right on. And again, Ed, I know you're the moderator, but I'm very interested thoughts you have.
Well, I have kept quiet on purpose because the wind from the 150-mile-an-hour conversations going on
Wow.
will blow me down and blow me overboard. But no, I set the show up on purpose to be a forum, and nobody wants to hear from me, but they just want me to run it correctly, and so I'm trying to do that. And so the audience out there who will be watching and also the audio listening to this while they're doing a walk or driving in the car or doing something, this, I believe, will keep them walking faster and faster. Because the energy here and the clarity of you, both of you, your statements to date are extremely helpful. And the nature of your commentary to date creates a psychologically safe environment, in my opinion, and that is a win for everybody. So why is ICE in Minneapolis, and why are they just standing around? And what is going on there? There has to be other reporting. So far, I haven't found it about what are they doing there, and why are they stopping traffic in the street, and which is a pretty threatening thing to do, in my view. Right.
Well, I'll offer an opinion, Ed, and I don't know that my opinion at this point is factually correct, but a lot of what as recently as yesterday's situation is a result of is the fraud that has been discovered recently. And I don't want to appear judgmental that I know the facts. I know what I've heard and read, but the the facts or the accusations in what has been discovered to this point of fraud involving daycare centers and the distribution of tax funds that have been distributed under false pretenses. And it seems, and what I'm about to say may not be factually correct, but it seems, based on what I've heard, it is predominantly in the Somalian community of Minnesota, which Somalians are immigrants, and I'm totally supportive of immigrants who come into our country legally and want to assimilate with us. But anyone who abuses funding, whether you're an immigrant or not, deserves attention. It just happens, it seems, that the fraud is centered on the Somalian community in Minnesota. Now, that is my perception, Ed and Ken. You may have a different perception, but that's where I am at this point.
So is this a result of the Biden era immigration allowances, that there was mass immigration during that
Well,
time?
it would seem possibly yes. Now I use the word possibly from my perspective because some of the Somalians have been in place long before Joe Biden was in office. Now, what percentage of or what number of, I don't know, but it seems that the immigration policy under Joe Biden at least excused or brought in more immigrants. And so and I'm going to use the word it seems. So I don't want people to think that I am an authority on this. I'm learning as time goes on.
Ken, what do you think?
There's so much about this that we don't know, and I certainly agree with Ron that it's a learning opportunity for all of us. I did hear Mayor Fry of Minneapolis, and he was absolutely adamant and insisting that ICE be removed and let them handle this on their own. There's so many different perspectives on this. There's so much more to learn, and here we have a tragedy of the death of an individual as part of this whole encounter that occurred, and that's just a tragedy either way. But there's more to be taken apart here and unpacked to figure out what's really going on and how to resolve the issues that are going on there. But I certainly think it's important to listen to the mayor of that city, and he was quite emotional and very clear on what he wanted to be done with this.
And Ken, from my perspective, there's unity from the governor all the way down to and through the mayor and so forth, which to me indicates there is a culture within the state of Minnesota. And, how much of this is correct? How much of this is, let's say, cover up? I don't know. I don't want to offer an opinion at that point because, as you very correctly said, the investigation is ongoing, and I don't know exactly what the facts are. And so I'm very interested in following this. But in the context of the family and the work environment, I think it's appropriate to discuss immigration and what may or may not be, well, what is your opinion and perspective of immigrants you're in favor of, you're not, and so forth. But every person, a fundamental value that I have, every person is a valued person. Now, if you're here illegally, that makes you, in my opinion, an illegal yet valued person. So if you're here illegally, there are laws that apply in. So I'll let the law enforcement folks work through that, but that doesn't, even if you are here illegally, doesn't make you a less valued person.
Ken, let's shift gears a little bit to what's going on in the workplaces as we start 2026 and the advent of AI, the commands of coming back to the office. How is that working? Do you have an insight into the back to the office?
Well,
commands
again,
that
there's
have
so
begun?
much. Yeah, it's a great question, and there's so much debate about this. It's interesting you talk about back to the office, and then there are a lot of articles coming out now how today's most recent college grads are having difficulty finding jobs that actually utilize their college education. A lot of those jobs, at least in many of these articles, are being eliminated because of AI. So the young students are coming out of college with a degree and student debt and unable to find work because AI has taken those jobs. It's less the case for those that have STEM majors that are more in science and math and technology. But nonetheless, that's going on. In terms of back to work, it's real. Companies are doing it, although there's more flexibility now than there was pre-COVID. Maybe coming in on a hybrid basis, coming in 4 days a week is what I'm seeing a lot of now. And a lot of employees are feeling this is much better. We have more communication and so forth. On the other hand, there are many employees saying, I was getting all my work done and even more. We have all this technology that we can use to maintain communication with each other. So there's some dissatisfaction on that part. But the reality is companies want their employees to come back in, and that's what it is. So in many cases, they're letting those who have moved away and are working remotely stay on, but they're not looking to bring on more remote and certainly more remote employees, and certainly to have a visitor local back to work some number of days a week. At least that's what I've been seeing and reading about of late.
Ron, comment on
Oh
back to
yeah,
work?
there's AI and college education as a college degree required and so forth. I know there is I would say, from my perspective, a general movement, or at least in thinking, do I need a college degree to function in whatever position? In some cases, and I'm reading a book right now that has an analysis of the number of people serving in positions that do not require a college degree. And college degrees, we know, are very expensive. Many come out of college with a six-digit debt over their head, and it's going to take decades for them to solve that, to pay off that debt. So it's a matter of, do I need a college education to serve in the position I'm in, or is it more of a matter of critical thinking skills? I'm a believer that there's no artificial intelligence that will ever replace the human brain. Artificial intelligence is here because of the thought that first occurred in the human brain. So as we leaders train the human brain, work with those who have the skills to be innovative thinkers, I believe we can develop those skills, and there likely are, and almost certainly are, some companies, some positions that can be replaced with robots, AI, and so forth. But I know there's some positions that cannot replace. No AI or robot can ever replace the human brain. And so I think it is incumbent on us as leaders, parents, caregivers, and so forth, help those with critical thinking skills to determine, do you need a college degree to function at your best skill or aptitude level? And the answer might be, no, you don't. You just need to assimilate yourself in a business culture that will develop your skill sets.
Ken, I'd like to move on to another topic that's related to the idea of taking care of your employees in the office and how this has or could, how this process could be a wonderful thing for business relationships now that the staff is back to the office much more. Ken, should executives have a town hall kind of setup on a regular basis, say once a month, to discuss a very specific topic openly that will impact the workforce?
I don't know that I would schedule it automatically once a month. It can turn into a ritual when people are busy. I would certainly have those kinds of meetings, overall meetings, certainly as needed. And I wouldn't let a whole bunch of time go by. Maybe 6 months go by, I would want to do one. I wouldn't do it regularly. What I would do regularly is what we would call continuous feedback model of meeting every week or two on a regular basis, one-on-one with members of the team. How are things going? What questions do you have? How are we doing on progress toward goals? What can we work together on? Do we need to make any shifts here? What issues or questions have arisen for you? And that's work-wise, as well as, not without saying the word mental health, but seeing if they're overly stressed or if they're distracted. Just make sure we're keeping in touch with our employees and helping them and guiding them along the way. So it doesn't just show up once or twice a year at some performance appraisal session or something like that. So in terms of overall town hall meetings, I would vary that. I'd want to have some during the year with my team, but I wouldn't for me, I wouldn't do it as a regularly scheduled, oh God, it's last Friday of the month. Now we have to take an hour and do this. I wouldn't want to get into that mode. But I think if I'm doing regular one-on-ones with my team, there's a lot less need for that as well.
That's an
And
interesting point. Yes, Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm right on target with you, Ken. That anything that's regularly scheduled, well, we have to meet because it's on the calendar. No, let's meet because we have a need for that. The need, my opinion, is what are the long-term objectives of my company that we're working toward? What is my strategy to achieve those longer-term objectives? And then nearer term, what are the tactics I'm using to achieve those objectives? And so, as there is a need to discuss, let's do, but let's don't put it on the calendar and meet only because, well, we have to because it's on the calendar. But everything, in my opinion, is best done when there's a need for it. But I'm long-term oriented as I'm thinking of the need.
So the concept that I have in mind is communications from the C-suite to everybody else about how the workplace can continue morphing into a learning university setup, whereby the C-suite is there to help employees at every level do more, do better, be more creative, and that kind of an approach.
I think that's it's important, but I think it's kind of expression I just read and I really like it. Focusing more on deed than creed. You know, we might believe all this from the C-suite, but if they're up there just, if you will, talking and pontificating, and it's not really shown in the behaviors, the policies, the programs, the opportunities, it's just a bunch of words. So I would really focus on actions and behaviors and what's actually being done, as opposed to here's what we believe, here's what we think, here's what we aspire to be. That's all going to just float by. It's not going to resonate with the team.
Good point, Ron.
Yeah, I'm right there. That as a leader in a company, I have to know that I want to know that my people are fulfilled in being in the company. They know what their contribution is. They know their skill set. They know the company's longer term objectives. And I would hope that that's a, quote, well-oiled machine in that and not everybody's going to be satisfied at the end of each day, but longer term, again, long-term thinking. But I want to be very aware of whether people seem to be fulfilled in their job position. Do I need more training for the folks, or where am I with this? But it is, Ken uses the term frequently that it's feedback or feed forward. But one-on-one meetings are almost always more effective than group meetings. Although I would never suggest never having a group meeting, because different perspectives are brought up in group meetings. But in my way of operating, individual meetings should be far more frequent than the group meetings.
Okay, so we're coming to a close in the next 10 minutes or so. By design, we want to practice brevity as much as possible rather than just stretch out time. And if we would like to meet more frequently on short, laser-focused topics for 15-minute rapid discussion, as part of that idea that you just expressed, Ron, of more frequent, more focused, and with media prep built in, so that people are comfortable within the TV room environment. That's critical, because not everybody wants to come long distance, sit in a meeting. A lot of people can do it electronically and still participate. What do you think of that, Ron?
Oh no, I'm right on with you.
Yeah.
That we leaders have to project. We have to inspire others. Others have to know we care. And the longer the meeting doesn't mean the more I care, but rather the manner in which I speak, the facial expressions, the quality time we have is the indicator of how much I know about you, how much I care. And so the more frequent those conversations are, and it doesn't have to be daily, but it could be just just a quick pass by at the coffee bar. But my acknowledgement to you, and we've discussed it before, sometimes a 17-second thank you, but being very specific of what I'm thanking you for. Ed, Ken, your conversation I overheard on the phone with that person was very inspiring. I just heard you say, and I'm being very specific, but it only took 17 seconds to make mention of that. And the fact that the fact that I highlighted that in passing doesn't diminish the importance of it. It just means that I noticed it, and we don't need 10 minutes to discuss it. And so frequently, those are the conversations that will stay with a person more so than the hour-long meeting.
Ken?
Oh, absolutely. It's the idea of I want to try to catch someone doing something right, and an opportunity to give some recognition, appreciation, thanks, great job. It resonates with the person. It reinforces the behavior that they engaged in, so they're more likely to repeat it, and it stays with them. I mean, think back of positive recognition you've received, maybe even very early in your career. I remember I was a counselor in training at a summer camp and got some feedback from the owner of the camp saying that I did a good job on something or whatever. And there was no prize, there was no money, there was nothing tangible. Just the act of being recognized still stays with me. It still does. It stays with people and it motivates them, it energizes them, but not perfunctory recognition. It can be overdone. Too much can be a little bit detrimental. If every day, hey, great job, all of a sudden it turns into the sound of the air conditioning. So it has to be real, it has to be bona fide, timely, as close to the behavior in question as possible. And it will have a wonderful impact on the person. And by the way, people feel better when giving that kind of feedback. You know, saying something nice to someone, it makes you feel better too. If they've deserved it and you've recognized it and rewarded the person just verbally, because a lot of research shows the tangible reward that might come with recognition is less impactful than the recognition itself. So I totally line up with what Ron is saying here and look for those opportunities, not overdoing it, but certainly not waiting. Oh yeah, hey, a couple of months ago when you did that, that was great. I don't even remember what you're talking about. So it's no meaning whatsoever. So it's very important to give appropriate recognition as close to the positive behaviors as you can. And that's where being in person at the workplace is more valuable than working remotely. Those opportunities aren't as common, they aren't as frequent. So that's one of the negatives of it.
And I'll
Ron,
close out. Yeah.
No, you're first. You're my guest.
Okay. No, I'll close out with just a very quick story. That a brief conversation I had with my father-in-law. This may have been, this is probably 10, 12 years ago. That we were discussing a do-it-yourself building project. In 6 words, he said to me, "I really appreciate the way you think." And those words have resonated with me ever since then. That was particularly meaningful, and there's a much longer story behind that of why it was so meaningful. But it was a thought he had, and it has stayed with me for a long time. So I will tell you that many times, just a few words, and it doesn't take a long time to say the words, but many times, as with Ken, those words will stay with you for a lasting period and meaningful period of time.
Ron, let me ask you a question coming from what you just were talking about, based upon what Ken was talking about. Would this kind of the topics that we've been discussing here in the past 40 minutes or so be of value? This may be so obvious, but I want to hear it from you. Would this kind of a discussion, this kind of a learning experience that we've been blessed to be able to talk about openly like this for the past minutes, would that be useful for you to try to grow that kind of how-to service into your enterprise, your consulting business. Here's an example of having a broad discussion with narrow focuses and outcome and direction, that kind of a thing. Would that be helpful to your business?
Well, yes, it would be. And I will tell you that it's the focus is not on me at this point, Ed. It's on others. I know factually there are people in organizations who are like I used to be. I am I can talk at 150 miles an hour right now, but there was an earlier part of my life that literally I would not say a word in 2 weeks. And there's a whole story behind that. I want leaders to know there are people likely in your organization, and I'm not a fortune teller, but there are people likely in your organization who are not going to express themselves very openly because of different things that have happened in their life. And I'm not going to discuss those things with Ken or Ed until and unless I know I'm in a psychologically safe space. I know I can openly discuss what is bothering me. And you asked me, well, gosh, well, Ron, it just seems. And at that point, I may, and if you have developed trust with me, I'll feel comfortable that I can divulge with you. Yes, I don't feel comfortable discussing whatever it is because, and now that opens up the possibility for coaching, any number of things that are keeping me from performing at my full potential. I can almost promise you there's at least one person in your organization who is like that, and you won't know that. That meaning you won't know that inner hidden person until and unless you've developed the confidence they can discuss that with you. You can discern that into them, and it's very mutual. But until you become totally aware of that, this person is not going to perform at their greatest potential. Ed, that's a long, long answer to a simple yes answer to your question.
Well, thank you very much. Listen, as we come to a close here, I want to make an announcement here relative to what happened recently. I produced with Heather, London-based Heather, de Cruz Cornier. She's a business psychologist. And she and her husband went on a long planned Antarctica mission. Certainly a getaway, but they had a mission in mind to go to this remote place despite harsh conditions, despite risk and danger personally, physically, and mentally. And they needed to be properly schooled, properly conditioned, properly insured. And I'd like to give you some market research based upon the readership, the viewers of that particular TV show that I was fortunate to produce a few weeks ago. I'm going to read what I sent to Heather earlier today as a follow-up, as a customer service. FYI, extensive marketing and distribution is in the early stages. However, the initial stats are interesting to me. This is what I wrote to Heather. Audience type of that show, where she talked about the risks and the accomplishments and the survival and what they've learned from that experience. Audience type, senior level, and this is based upon LinkedIn data, not Google Analytics or anything else, LinkedIn data. So it's only the LinkedIn business audience that we're talking about here. But it's worldwide. However, you're going to learn where it's pinpointed right now. Audience type, senior level, in other words, who were the viewers? Who's in the audience that LinkedIn tracked? Senior level in companies having plus 1,000 employees, 49% of the total fell into that category. I thought that was interesting because that topic is kind of intellectual as well as adventurous. Audience location, in other words, where's the audience? Surprisingly, maybe not, but London, UK, Ireland, 12.3%, and it's the largest single group of the viewing audience so far. And the distribution and marketing has just begun. The area in the Northeast US and Canada, Toronto, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, Northern Virginia, Atlanta, Florida. So London, UK was 12.3%. That audience group that I just mentioned, 7.5%. But that's the next largest group. California, meaning Silicon Valley as well as LA, San Diego, 5%. Those are the top three of the audience. And adding those up, that's around 26% so far. So the audience distribution, in other words, the number of sends and the groups to whom I've sent that program, the sends do not say who actually watched it or for how long. A little bit more than 700,000 was the total send. And that was just a few days before Christmas. So not everybody's tuned in. Okay, so, but it went out to approximately 700,000 through the LinkedIn networks. And those statistics came from that send, which means a whole lot of people did not open the show yet. Okay, so, but the viewing audience that was tracked by LinkedIn, it's really an interesting mix to me. I've learned from that, and I think she will learn from that too. Now, what's the audience type? Okay, it's all business to business. 36%, in other words, the largest single group of viewers so far of that distribution, are involved with tech, business consulting and training, and then in-house learning and development, rewards, comp ben, and anything to do with talent development and HR. And once again, the level of the audience, according to LinkedIn, senior level in companies having more than 1,000 employees, 49% to date. That's a huge group. Now, the longer the show is available, free, global free access through the various networks, whether it's my website, globalbusinessnews.net, or Meta, which means Facebook and Instagram, and other groups, X and whatever, and all available free on YouTube and through my website, and then the derivative RSS feeds, which includes Spotify and Apple, but that's really not appropriate for this audience. That's more social and younger. The LinkedIn audience is older and it's business to business. I'm going to keep doing this distribution of the massive, it's almost 2 hours in length. So a lot of people don't like that kind of thing. And what I'm offering to my customers from now on, and I'm going public with this right now, is in my role as owner of the copyrights and program, I will grant rights at no fee whatsoever, free of charge, to the people who are featured on the show to chop it up. I'll send them the links. They could chop it up, reuse it, make reels, make PR things, do whatever they want, and use it into their own audience mix. I do not get compensated at all for that. I am continuing to do the distribution level after level into my personal LinkedIn networks, which are 2.6 million. Once again, it doesn't mean that it's an audience that is viewing everything that I send. Word to the wise, I'm giving you this information, and it's hot. It was just developed yesterday. Any comments? Anything? If not, it's okay.
No, congratulations, Ed, on your outreach. And I do think it's a matter of learning from each other. That how can we get the word out to other people? And marketing is an area that I am learning with every conversation. And I too, my primary customers are LinkedIn. And how do I get the word out to them in increasing number in ways that meet what I call pain points? So that's a lot of what I'm trying to do to meet the need.
So the group that I won't give names right now, we could follow up privately, but the group that I introduced you to the other day, that's they don't come any better in terms of that target level. But that means everybody else knows that too. So
Sure.
they are inundated. So we have to be careful with that valuable linkage. But they certainly welcome it. I've been sending stuff to that group and other groups since I began the YouTube station in March of 2020 as a result of COVID crashing into my live conference business. And I'm here to stay in the digital world, and I call it the global meeting room. Just yesterday, last night, in fact, I produced a short talk show featuring Amiko in Kobe, Japan, featuring Beverly in Hong Kong. And they came up with the idea of me working with them to bring in people from India and from Europe and other areas in the North America, Latin America. And that meant changing the structure, the timing. So it would be like a start of 9 or 10 p.m. California time, so that it's applicable for people in Europe and people in India and others throughout Asia Pacific. And that is really an interesting concept. So we've already begun sourcing people across Europe to join us in the next conversations.
I know. That's what I was thinking. I was getting ready.
Interesting, isn't it?
They don't come.
Oh, good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for being on the show. I'll get it edited and sent out to you and Ken later in this day.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Have a great day.
Thanks for being there.
Have a great one.
Thank
Be
you.
well, guys.
See ya.